Ever walked into a room and completely forgotten why? Or blanked on someone's name like right as you're about to introduce them?
Happens to the best of us.
It does.
Yeah.
Memory can be so fickle,
Yeah.
especially in our crazy, hyper-connected world.
Absolutely.
So today we're embarking on a memory mastery training program.
I like it.
You've given us a treasure trove of material on this.
Yeah.
Textbook excerpts, research papers, even practical guides.
Really runs the gamut.
It does, and our mission is to equip you with the most effective tools and techniques to level up your memory.
Think of it as memory boot camp.
Okay.
We'll start with the fundamentals
Bootcamp basics.
and then move to advanced tactics for remembering anything from grocery lists to speeches.
Okay, so let's start with bootcamp basics.
Right?
The sources dive into the science of memory, and I have to admit some of it is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah.
For example, they talk about this fascinating case study of patient HM who, after a specific brain surgery, could no longer form new long-term memories.
It's a really striking example of how fragile memory can be.
Wow.
What's so fascinating is that his short-term memory was intact.
Really?
He could hold information for a short period, but then it would vanish.
Oh, wow.
Like writing on an etch sketch and then giving it a shake.
So everything was just a fleeting moment for him.
Pretty much, yeah.
That really highlights why we need those strategies to shift information into long-term storage. It's like
Yeah.
the difference between jotting something on a sticky note versus carefully filing it away in a mental cabinet.
Exactly. Now, to understand how to make memories stick,
Okay.
we need to look at the stages of memory formation.
Okay.
The sources break it down into 4 key phases:
Okay.
attention encoding storage and retrieval.
So first you've got to actually focus on something for it to have any chance of becoming a memory.
Yeah.
Then comes encoding,
Right.
where your brain translates the information into a storable format.
Right.
It's almost like converting a file into a different type so your mental computer can read it.
Perfect analogy.
Then comes storage, where the memory is held.
Yep.
And finally, retrieval, the ability to access that memory when you need it.
The tricky part.
This is often where people struggle, like
Okay.
knowing you have a file saved somewhere on your computer,
Oh, yeah.
but not being able to find it.
That file searching analogy is spot on.
Okay, good.
Now,
Yeah.
one thing that surprised me is how the sources emphasize the power of forgetting.
Really?
Right.
We often view forgetting as a failure, but it seems like it's actually beneficial.
Think of forgetting as your brain's way of decluttering,
Okay.
of making space for the important stuff.
Okay.
It's not that the information is completely gone. It's more like it's been archived and you need the right cues to retrieve it.
Like a mental spring cleaning.
Exactly.
So it's not necessarily about remembering everything,
Right.
but remembering the things that matter most.
The things that matter.
But our modern world seems designed to make us forget.
It really does.
Multitasking, constant notifications, information overload. It feels like our attention is being pulled in a million directions at once.
You're hitting on a key point. These modern distractions are like thieves,
Yeah.
constantly stealing our attention and making it harder to encode information effectively.
Wow.
It's like trying to write a novel in a noisy, chaotic coffee shop.
Okay, so how do we fight back against these attention thieves?
Well, the sources offer some interesting strategies
Okay.
for reclaiming our focus and reducing absent-mindedness.
Okay.
One that stood out to me is narrating your actions.
Narrating your actions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It sounds simple, but it's surprisingly effective.
Okay.
By verbalizing your actions, like, I'm putting my keys on the hook,
Yeah.
I'm turning off the stove.
Hey!
You're bringing your attention to the present moment and strengthening the memory.
It's like you're creating a mental note to self.
You got it.
Another tip is to designate specific places for items you often misplace.
Yes.
Keys always go on the key hook wallet in the designated drawer.
Right.
Consistency is key.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. The sources also suggest retraining your attention through time boxing.
Time boxing.
Yeah, dedicating specific blocks of time
Okay.
for focused work
Okay.
helps eliminate distractions and strengthens your ability to concentrate.
That makes a lot of sense. If you're fully present during those focus blocks,
Yeah,
you're much more likely to absorb and remember the information.
right.
It's like giving your brain a clear signal.
Uh-huh.
This is important. Pay attention.
That's it.
Now, beyond those general strategies,
Yeah.
the sources delve into specific memory techniques that can significantly boost your ability to remember,
Oh, yeah.
to understand how they work.
Right.
It's helpful to learn about the key building blocks of effective memory, which are nicely captured by the acronym AVCPO.
EVCPO.
Okay, that sounds like something out of a Memory Wizard spellbook.
A little bit.
What does it stand for?
AVCPO stands for association,
Okay.
visualization,
Uh,
elaboration, combination, practice, and organization. Okay, a lot of things packed in there.
It is.
Think of it as a toolbox
Yeah.
for building strong, lasting memories.
Exactly.
So let's unpack each of these tools.
Right.
What does association involve?
Association is about creating links between new information and things you already know.
Okay.
If you're trying to learn a new person's name,
Okay.
you might associate it with someone famous or a character from your favorite book.
That reminds me of how I finally learned to remember the difference between stalactites and stalagmites.
Oh, yeah.
Stalactites hang tight to the ceiling of a cave.
That's a great example.
Now, visualization is about creating vivid mental images
Yes.
to represent information.
Right.
The more outlandish and interactive the image, the more memorable it will be.
Absolutely.
I'm a visual learner, so this one definitely resonates with me.
Yeah.
What about elaboration?
Elaboration involves adding details and meaning to information.
Okay.
Instead of just passively absorbing facts, ask yourself why questions. Dig deeper into the concepts and make them personally relevant.
So it's about actively engaging with the information rather than just skimming the surface.
Exactly.
What about combination?
Combination involves integrating different building blocks.
Okay.
You might combine visualization with association to create an unforgettable image.
Yeah.
Then there's practice, which is crucial for strengthening those neural pathways.
Repetition is key, right?
Repetition is key.
And lastly, organization.
Organization is all about structuring information in a way that makes sense to you.
Okay.
This could involve creating categories, timelines, or mind maps.
Okay.
Find a system that helps you make sense of the information and easily retrieve it later.
So AVECPO provides a framework for understanding the key elements of effective memory.
It does.
But how do these building blocks translate into specific techniques?
Well,
The sources mention a few that really piqued my interest.
okay.
One is the link system.
The link
So
system.
I'm curious, how does that work?
The link system is all about creating memorable connections between items in a list
Okay.
using vivid interactive images.
Okay.
Say you need to remember dry batteries, a birthday card, and toothpaste from the store.
Okay. I can picture that shopping list. I always seem to forget at least one thing.
Right.
How would I use the link system to remember it all?
Imagine a giant battery rolling down a hill
Okay.
and crashing into a display of birthday cards,
Okay.
sending cards flying everywhere.
I'm picturing
And
it.
then one of those cards lands in a tube of toothpaste.
The toothpaste explodes like a volcano, covering everything in minty freshness.
There you go.
Okay. That's an image I won't soon forget.
Exactly. The more bizarre and interactive the image,
Okay.
the more memorable it will be.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these techniques can be real game changers for memory.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm ready to dive deeper.
Great.
What's next on our memory mastery agenda?
Let's move from bootcamp basics to field exercises. We'll explore some powerful techniques for remembering foreign language vocabulary, mastering lists, and even delivering speeches from memory.
Wow.
I think you'll be surprised by just how much your memory is capable of.
I am ready for the challenge.
Good.
Okay, we've covered the memory bootcamp basics now. I'm ready for those field exercises you mentioned. The sources mention a few techniques that really caught my eye, especially for things like language learning and public speaking. Where should we start?
Let's tackle information overload head on.
Okay.
It's a common challenge in our data-saturated world.
Yeah, it feels like drinking from a fire hose sometimes.
It is.
The sources talk about this concept called spaced review, often using flashcards.
Right?
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just flipping through a stack of cards.
You're right. Spaced review is all about strategic timing.
Okay.
The idea is to review information right before you're about to forget it,
Right.
which helps solidify it in your long-term memory.
So it's not about cramming everything in at once,
No.
but spacing out those reviews over time?
Exactly. And as you become more familiar with the material,
Yeah,
you can gradually space out those reviews further and further.
that makes sense. It's like building muscle memory for your brain.
Now, one interesting method of spaced review that the sources highlight is the Leitner box system.
Leitner box system. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Imagine having a series of boxes,
Okay.
each representing a different level of mastery.
Okay.
You start with all your flashcards in the first box.
Oh,
When you review a card and get it right,
yeah.
you move it to the next box,
Uh-huh.
which has a longer review interval.
Right.
If you get it wrong, it stays put or moves back to an earlier box.
So the cards you know well get reviewed less often,
Right.
and the ones you struggle with get more frequent attention. It's like a personalized training program for your memory.
Exactly. And thankfully, you don't need physical boxes these days.
Oh, good.
There are digital flashcard programs that take this concept to a whole new level.
Ah, so there's an app for that.
There is an app for that.
What are the advantages of using those digital programs?
Well, they automate the scheduling of reviews,
Okay.
track your progress, and even use algorithms to adjust the spacing based on your performance.
So sophisticated.
It's like having a personal memory coach in your pocket.
Sign me up for that. The sources mention something called SPRT, which is used in some of these programs. What does that stand for?
SPRIT stands for Space Retrieval Practice with Interleaving Trials.
Okay, a mouthful.
It combines space retrieval with the concept of interleaving,
Okay.
which means mixing different subjects or topics during your study sessions.
So instead of studying one subject in isolation, you're switching between them.
Exactly.
Why is that helpful?
Interleaving forces your brain to work harder to retrieve the information,
Okay.
making the learning process more challenging, but ultimately more effective for long-term retention.
So it's like cross-training for your brain,
Yeah.
building mental agility and flexibility.
You got-
Now, a lot of the sources we're looking at focus specifically on language learning. Are these techniques particularly relevant for mastering a new language?
Absolutely. Language learning is essentially a giant memory challenge.
Oh, yeah.
You're juggling vocabulary, grammar, rules, pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's a lot to keep straight.
I can imagine. The sources seem to suggest that spaced review combined with certain mnemonic techniques can be really powerful for language acquisition.
One technique that stands out is the enhanced keyword method,
Okay.
which builds upon the keyword method we discussed earlier.
Right. That's the one where you connect a foreign word to a sound-alike word in your native language using a memorable image.
The enhanced keyword method takes it a step further
Okay.
by adding location to the equation.
Location.
So instead of just a random image,
Yep.
you imagine that image in a specific location
Okay.
that you associate with the language.
Okay, so if I'm learning Italian, I might imagine all my Italian vocabulary words in a bustling piazza in Rome.
Exactly.
And if I'm learning Japanese, I might imagine my Japanese words in like a peaceful Zen garden.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Kyoto,
Okay.
this added layer of location creates a more vivid and memorable link to the word.
That's a really cool concept. It's like mentally immersing yourself in the language now beyond these specific techniques. The sources talk about the importance of mental filing systems for organizing information. What are those all about?
Mental filing systems are like having a well-organized mental cabinet for your thoughts.
Okay.
They provide a framework for storing and retrieving information in a structured way,
Okay.
which can be incredibly helpful for memorizing lists, speeches, or even just keeping track of your daily tasks.
So instead of having a jumbled mess of information floating around in my head,
Right.
I can categorize and organize it. That sounds way less stressful.
It is one of the most powerful mental filing systems.
Okay.
And one that we touched on briefly earlier
Okay.
is the method of loci. This is where memory palaces come in.
Right. Memory palaces, those involve associating information with familiar locations. I'm starting to see how all these techniques are connected.
The method of loci can be adapted to a wide range of information.
Okay.
You could use it to memorize a shopping list, a presentation outline, or even a historical timeline.
So you're basically turning your home or any familiar place into a mental storage system.
Exactly. Choose a location you know well
Mm-hmm.
and can easily visualize in your mind.
Okay.
Then assign the information you want to remember to specific points within that location.
Okay.
When you need to recall the information, you take a mental walk through your memory palace,
Okay.
retrieving the information from each spot.
It's like having a built-in mental map for your thoughts, but can these systems also be used for more complex information? Like if I'm trying to remember the key takeaways from a book or a research paper?
Absolutely, you can combine the method of loci with other techniques,
Okay.
like the link system or the keyword method,
Mm-hmm.
to create a system for capturing and remembering insights from anything you read. Imagine assigning the main ideas of each chapter to different rooms in your house, and then using mnemonic techniques to remember the supporting details within each room.
It's like turning your mind into a personalized library.
And what's great about this approach is that it not only helps you remember the information,
Yeah.
but also encourages deeper understanding.
Okay.
When you take the time to create a mental representation of the material,
Uh-huh.
you're engaging with it on a much deeper level, making connections and forming your own insights.
So it's not just about memorization. It's about comprehension, and critical thinking as well. Now we've been talking about books and physical materials, but what about the overwhelming amount of information we encounter online?
Good point.
How do we manage and remember all of that?
That's where bookmarking and tagging systems come in.
Mhm.
Think of them as your tools for curating your own personal library of the web.
Okay.
They allow you to organize and retrieve online information efficiently.
It's like bringing order to the chaos of the internet.
The sources recommend some powerful tools for doing this, like Diego and Zotero. Have you ever used those?
I've heard of Diego, but I'm not familiar with the Zotero. What is it exactly?
Zotero is a free and open source reference management software
Okay.
that allows you to collect organized cite and share research.
Wow.
It's like a supercharged bookmarking system designed specifically for academics and researchers.
Okay.
You can save articles, books, web pages, even multimedia content.
Sounds like a lifesaver for students and researchers. So it's not just saving links, but creating a searchable database with notes and tags.
Exactly. And Zotero can even generate citations and bibliographies in various formats, which is incredibly helpful for academic writing.
Okay, I'm definitely going to check out Zotero. So we've got all these incredible tools and techniques for managing information overload, but it seems like it's not just about using the tools,
It's not.
but also about knowing how to use them effectively, right?
That's a crucial point. The sources highlight the importance of metacognition,
Metacognition.
which essentially means thinking about thinking.
Okay.
It's about becoming aware of your own learning processes and strategies.
So it's about being mindful of how you learn
Yes.
and adapting your approach accordingly.
Exactly. Metacognition is about asking yourself questions like, what are my strengths and weaknesses as a learner? What strategies work best for me? How can I monitor my progress and adjust my approach as needed?
It's like becoming your own learning coach.
By becoming more aware of your own learning processes,
Uh-huh.
you can make more informed decisions about which memory techniques to use
Okay.
and how to use them most effectively. It's about finding what works best for you.
This has been incredibly insightful. It feels like we've not only learned about memory, but also about learning itself.
We have, and I think this understanding will equip us to navigate the ever-expanding world of information more effectively.
For sure. So are you ready to move from field exercises to real-world application?
Let's move on to mission deployment.
Okay.
We'll explore how to use these techniques to improve note-taking, enhance reading comprehension, and even accelerate skill learning.
Okay, we've covered the fundamentals, explored some powerful techniques, and now I'm ready for mission deployment. How can we apply all of this to our everyday lives?
Well, it's one thing to understand these techniques in theory, but the real magic happens when we put them into practice.
Absolutely.
The sources offer some great examples of how to integrate these strategies into our daily routines,
Okay.
starting with note-taking.
Note-taking is something I do constantly, whether it's for work meetings or just jotting down ideas, but I have to confess my notes often end up a disorganized jumble.
Yeah, I think we've all been there. The key is to shift from passive scribbling to active engagement.
Okay.
The sources suggest using techniques like hierarchical summary outlines
Okay.
to make notes more meaningful and memorable.
Hierarchical summary outlines, that sounds a bit intimidating. What exactly does that involve?
It's actually quite simple. You create an outline that captures the main ideas and supporting details in a structured way.
Okay.
Start with the main topic at the top, then break it down into subtopics and so on. It's like
Mhm.
creating a mental map of the information.
So instead of just a linear list of points, you're creating a visual representation of how those points connect.
Exactly. And the sources suggest incorporating mnemonic techniques within those outlines.
Oh, wow.
You could use the link system to remember the key points within a subtopic,
Okay.
or the keyword method to remember definitions or technical terms.
So it's like taking notes on steroids. You're not just writing down information, but actively processing and encoding it in a way that makes it stick.
Now, moving beyond note-taking,
Okay.
the sources also talk about applying these techniques to reading comprehension. We've all had that experience of reading an entire chapter and then realizing we've retained almost nothing.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Like the words just went in one ear and out the other.
The sources emphasize that effective reading isn't passive.
Yep.
It's about actively engaging with the text, asking questions, making connections. They recommend a technique called SQ3R.
SQ3R, what does that stand for?
It stands for Survey, Question, Read, Recite, and Review.
Okay, 5 steps.
It's a systematic approach that helps you break down the material and interact with it on a deeper level.
Okay, break it down for me. What's involved in each step?
First, you survey the material.
Okay.
Skim through headings, subheadings, and visuals to get a sense of the overall structure and key topics. Then you formulate questions based on what you've skimmed,
Okay.
things you want to learn or clarify as you read.
So it's about setting a purpose for your reading, almost like creating a treasure map to guide your exploration.
Exactly. Then you read the material carefully,
Okay.
actively seeking answers to your questions and making connections to what you already know next. You recite what you've read,
Okay.
summarizing the key points in your own words.
It's like teaching the material back to yourself to solidify your understanding.
And finally, you review the material,
Okay.
going back over your notes, highlighting key points, and making sure you've addressed all your initial questions.
So SQ3R is a complete system for making the most of your reading time and boosting comprehension. Could you also incorporate some of the memory techniques we've discussed into this process?
Absolutely. You could use the method of loci to remember the key points from each section, or the link system to create a mental map of the relationships between different ideas. It's about finding what works best for you in your learning style.
That's amazing. It feels like we've gone from basic memory hacks to a whole new level of learning mastery. But what about those really complex tasks like learning a new skill or a completely new subject? Can these techniques help with that?
The sources suggest that any skill or subject, no matter how complex, can be mastered by breaking it down into smaller, more manageable chunks instead of trying to learn everything at once.
Okay.
You focus on one piece at a time.
So it's like climbing a mountain. You
Uh,
don't try to reach the summit in one giant leap. You break it down into base camps and smaller climbs.
That's a great analogy. And to make sure you retain those smaller chunks,
Yeah.
you can use memory techniques like the method of loci or the link system to create vivid mental representations of each step. This makes it much easier to recall and apply what you've learned.
That makes so much sense. It's like creating mental blueprints for building the skill. Is there anything else that's helpful when tackling those more challenging learning goals?
The sources also emphasize the importance of seeking out diverse perspectives and sources of information. Don't limit yourself to just one textbook or one teacher. Explore different viewpoints and approaches.
So it's about approaching learning with an open mind and a sense of curiosity. And I imagine that by applying memory techniques to each new source, you're creating a much richer and more integrated understanding of the subject.
Exactly. It's about weaving together different threads of knowledge to create a tapestry of understanding.
This has been an incredible journey. It feels like we've uncovered a treasure trove of tools and strategies for not just remembering information, but for learning and growing in all areas of our lives.
I agree. And I think the most important takeaway is that memory is not some fixed ability that we're stuck with. It's a skill that can be trained and enhanced with the right tools and techniques.
So no matter who we are or what we're trying to learn, we all have the potential to become memory masters.
Absolutely. And by embracing the techniques we've explored in this deep dive, we can unlock our full cognitive potential and achieve truly remarkable things.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and guiding us through this fascinating world of memory mastery. And for our listeners, I encourage you to put these techniques into practice, experiment, explore, and discover what works best for you, as we've learned. The power to remember is within your grasp.